back in the 50s and 60s, we had international fleets. We had Russians, we had the United Kingdom. They had motherships out here just going to town on our fish stocks. I mean, the U.S. fleet was huge. The government didn't know any better, and they just free-for-all. Well, it came to the point where stocks were getting depleted. You know, the U.S. fisheries were getting hurt because our other nations were in here taking our fish resources and sending them back home. And in the meantime, they had a big detrimental on it. So in '76, Magnuson-Stevens Acts came in, kicked the international fleet outside the EEZ line, which is the Hague line now, separates us from Canada. And back then, I mean, there was like, what, 3,500 active fishing vessels still here in New England. Well, fast forward again to in the late 90s, we had a buyback program. Well, now we're back down to what, 500 vessels? 20 years later, cutbacks, deaths, no renewed permits, you know, consolidation of permits. More conservation groups made it a strict effort to cut us back further and further. And then now we're being regulated by poor data. I mean, absolutely the poorest. It's political science these days. It's not even science. The science is dictated as the natural observation of things. It's like, well, how did you naturally observe something with 42 nautical miles of bottom towed for 3 years? And then now they're asking for like 82% reductions on the Gulf of Maine haddock based on 42 nautical miles of bottom towed. I go, well, hell, the first day of my last trip, I towed 60 nautical miles. I go, and it didn't cost the taxpayer $62 million. I go, but you're going to sit there and tell me after 42 nautical miles in a 36,000 square miles area that you're sure that we need to do an 82% reduction? I go, you know, a piss drop on a toilet seat could show you more. Like, what? I go, technically, a piss drop on a toilet seat covers more area in comparison. I go, and the fact that you're going to use this and dictate and tell everybody that makes a living on the water that they can no longer harvest these fish based on nothing, why? But then you got to look at, well, what do they want? They want to industrialize the ocean these days. There's 10 million acre lease possibilities all the way from Georges Bank to the Gulf of Maine. These wind turbines and everything they put in have HDVC cables, will push off magnetic interference, which is going to affect our migration patterns, not to mention warm the ocean. You know, they've got cooling stations. And then we were just at a meeting, oh, you know, it's not going to cool the water. It's like, well, the whole idea of putting wind turbines on and kicking people off the ocean to take over the bottom was because our ocean water was warming, and you said our fish stocks were depleting. Well, that's funny, because I'm catching more fish now than I did 20 years ago. So we need to put wind turbines in because the ocean's warming. Oh, that was the surface temperature. Well, now we're going to put cooling stations in that take cold water, heat it up from the cables, and pump out 90-degree water. I go, you're actually going to do what you told me the whole reason you're going to put them in to not do. So why are we doing this? And, you know, and then they want to take in consideration about stocks and migration. It's just like, well, Noah and BOEM and everybody, oh, we're talking to the fishermen. It's like, no, you're only talking to, BOEM only talked to me when I made them talk to me. I go, and as far as Noah, I go, I mean, last November, 15 of us went to the sector building. 15 of us blue water captains that are left in the fleet went to the sector building here in Gloucester. It was like 355 years of experience between all 15 of us. I stood up right at the beginning and go, has anybody ever talked to a NOAA official about biomass, our fish stocks? Nobody. Nobody even had a phone call, unless it was enforcement. You know, how bad is that? I mean, 355 years of experience is 1,000 NOAA agents. There might be 50 dragomen that work Gulf of Maine and Georges Bank left in New England, and out of 355 years of experience combined, not one person, not one. That's pretty bad. Like I told him, I go, you couldn't find 30 employees to make one phone call apiece out of 1,000? I go, hell, you could have found 2 to make 15 apiece. I go, they never have. But if you go to these meetings and listen to the public, oh, we're talking to the fishermen. I go, who? Who exactly are you talking to? I go, because they're all on my phone, pick one. I go, it's not like the Maine lobstermen, and there's 5,400 of them. I go, there's only about maybe 50 of us left in New England. I go, so it's not like we're hard to track down. I go, there's VMS units. You'll know when we're in. I go, I hope you know when we're in because you're charging us to know. It's gotten crazy. It's gotten crazy with all these things these days, you know. And it's just, there's no science left in this. They told us that their online services have gone up like I don't know what, 350%. It's like, well, because you're not even going to the office anymore, so you're sitting in your living room on your laptop telling me what's in the ocean. I go, you're good. I go, you're real good. You know, they're sitting there like, well, we know what the fish stocks. I go, that's funny because I've been at sea for 23 years learning these things. What book did you read? They're like, what? I go, well, hell, if I knew I only had to read a book to know everything that was in the ocean, I'd have rather read the damn book than spend 23 years at sea. And they just look at you like you got two heads. It's just like, did I miss something?